This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
You know, and we talk as creative people about how creative isn't a deliverable, it's a culture. We say that all the time. And I have learned over the years that so often we focus on the output of the creative product and forget about the work that went into it.
In 2009, which is crazily like 14 years ago somehow now, the world was introduced to a company called Uber Cab. And a little over a year after, in May of 2010, Uber basically goes live in San Francisco, launching in a San Francisco app, and limo rides is how all this thing gets started. At the end of 2010, in December, Travis Kalanick takes over as CEO. And in 2011, things go gangbusters, launching in New York, Chicago, and by the end of the year, we're beyond borders. Paris, Toronto, London, Mexico. It is hard to believe it's now been a decade since a $1.2 billion Series D round that BlackRock and Google Ventures and Sherpa Ventures are all in on. And then the culture gets a little wonky, we'll say. Near the end of 19, Travis Kalanick sells off around 90% of his shares at the end of 19. And 4 months later is when my guest shows up at Uber and starts her journey there. Now, Dara, I'm going to completely blow this. Dara Khosrowshahi, did I get it right?
Khosrowshahi.
Ah, so close. Is now CEO of the company. And he brings in Danielle Hawley, who is the Global Executive Creative Director at Uber. And was that your OG title when you started there?
It is. It is. Actually, my new title includes brand. So it's Global Executive Creative Director of Brand and Creative.
Is that a business card in your pocket? Oh my! So...
No, it's actually kind of silly, but you know, just to say that it has my role and my title has evolved since I started.
Well, let's start with culture, and then let's talk about why you felt, or why they felt, or someone felt that the title should change. And
yeah,
I mean, first of all, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and that's sort of an odd one because in some ways my job is to first look around and see like what is she all about. And when I ran into your work and looked at your arc, it's just you're just every piece is so thoughtful. And you know, I always say in this media obese world we live in, when you're not there to defend an idea, is it really going to short circuit people and get them to think just a little bit differently? And like every piece that I see, of course, I'm sure you're making sure I see specific pieces from your past, just does that. And so I love your product and your work. Thank you for doing that. Culture.
Yeah.
You show up. Like, is this part of your job on day one to like bring your broom to work and clean up aisle 7, or is it more about, hey, you know what? I know this is important. I know I'm going to fix the product, and along the way, that product is our people.
I think it was all the above. It certainly wasn't. You know, Dara had already set an example of what Uber 2.0 would be. You know, we have a value around here that's do the right thing, period. And Uber in the Dara chapter, in the 2.0 chapter, was certainly taking out its broom, to your point. It was, you know, don't go into communities and blow it up and ask for forgiveness. It was build with communities. You know, it was certainly, we have a standard of the way that we treat each other within the walls of Uber, and we need to hold each other accountable to those standards. Those sorts of foundational elements, I think, were in place. But what my remit was, you know, absolutely make the work better, but also inspire this place with a creative culture. You know, and we talk as creative people about how creative isn't a deliverable, it's a culture. We say that all the time. And I have learned over the years that so often we focus on the output of the creative product and forget about the work that went into it. And this business is a team sport. And that means that the insights that went into the creative brief, the data that uncovered the insight, the media team who decided that a go-to-market strategy that was innovative was going to be the power behind the idea. All of that is the work. And when you come in as an executive creative director and you talk about those things, you're immediately including people into the work that otherwise have felt like cogs in a wheel. And that was absolutely part of my remit and something that I really enjoyed talking about, building, and seeing be successful at Uber.
So, I mean, what's it, 6 years in now?
3 years, 3 years.
3 years in.
3 years.
You're 3 years in. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's
This
okay.
is why I'm good with words, not math. So 1,000 days in, how's it going? Like when you show up on day one, I mean, or it's probably like week 2.
Yeah.
Were you like, oh, okay, oh boy, like what was the the first thoughts to where you are now?
I mean, I think immediately you see something at Uber that, everybody talks about the speed of tech and how fast tech companies move. I think Uber is the fastest of the fast. I genuinely do. And I started literally 3 weeks into lockdown. And we watched Uber Eats going from something that was essentially a laptop on a desk that if you closed, basically shut down the service, to, being this massive life raft during a time where we were as a company telling people not to move, to stay where they were, to not use our service. We could supplement that business with, we'll bring things to you. Let us know what it is that you need. In so many ways, we use the app technology to help essential workers beyond just delivering online food delivery. We were really there as a movement company, and Uber drivers and couriers became part of the essential working movement. I have honestly never in my life seen a company pivot like that. And the amount of hustle that was so clearly evident in everybody at Uber, and that desire of hustle coupled with the do the right thing was actually pretty phenomenal.
Well, you layer on the pandemic piece too, so now your arm is tied behind your back. How are those pivots, like who's in the room or the Zoom to have those conversations? What does that team look like? Because that's, I'm assuming you're putting the customer at the center, and like, how are we serving the needs of the customer? What do they need right now? But like, are you in that room with them as well? Like you said, creativity isn't just an output; it's a culture thing.
Yeah, the operations side of it gets done really fast, and the marketing team isn't necessarily always in those rooms. I think 3 years in, we're getting invited more to those rooms than we did then, but certainly was the first time that the organization, which is huge, right? You're talking about 4 different regions with a different set of products, a different set of business needs, a different set of audiences. Essentially, it was the first time that Uber had the same brief globally. So the marketing rooms and the task force that were put together to think about, what do the new partnerships look like? How can we show up and service people as a movement company in a time where no one can move?
Wow. Yeah. Go back to Dara's comment about do the right thing. Do you call that a value or a principle at Uber?
It's a value. Yeah. I think there are 12. I would have to look.
I'm not going to test you on them, I promise. I am curious if he or the team honored the values that have always been there, or when Dara came in, the first thing he did was like, okay, here are the new values, and this is the path we're going to now go down.
It's actually really interesting because when we talk about culture, and I'm sorry to my team that I can't remember the number of values, I can tell you what they are. So I'd probably have to count them as I'm speaking them. But do the right thing was sort of one of those things that he said. Dara would say a lot. And through the pandemic, we showed the executive leadership team that those values needed to be codified, expressed clearly, and rolled out globally. And that was something that my internal team helped Dara and the executive leadership team do. Do the right thing was one of them.
and how else does it get operationalized inside the org? Or is it just now sort of hey, everyone we hire, we're trying to vet off of these values?
I mean, I think it can show up in a gazillion ways. Some of the other ones that I love, we talk a lot about being one Uber and operating as one company, despite our many silos. We talk a lot about building with heart. It's not just consumer focused. It's really the recognition that it is never about a ride and it is never about a delivery. There is a story and a human behind both ends of that, or quite frankly, all three ends. There's the merchant, there's the courier, and then there's the person ordering the food. There's a rider and there's a driver and there's a destination. There's so many different facets of this three-sided, sometimes four-sided marketplace where humans and stories are behind them. That when you think about building with heart and you're building products or features or rewards programs for earners, you have to take into consideration the humanity of it all.
You're inspiring me to find this name, and her name is Lacey Faye.
Mhm.
Okay, I was in San Antonio a few weeks ago, and my driver, name is Lacey Faye, is her quest is to be an Uber driver in every state. And she was in and by the way, her car is like this pimped out van with lights everywhere. To your point, it's a story, and there's been some trauma in her family. And again, it wasn't about the ride.
Right.
The ride went away. I mean, yeah, she got me from A to B, thankfully, but it became about this real connection that her and I had. And that, to be totally honest, I thought about this conversation because I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
Danielle should know about you and what you're doing. And so I don't know. I think you're spot on the stories of like, oh, first of all, how cool would it be if she actually makes it to all 50 states? She wants to do that as a driver. And,
Yep.
So when it comes to the stories for the team now, and I do want to get to brand, but like, how do you inspire, like where are you looking? Are you guys hunting for stories? How does that go? Is it more like an editing newsroom?
It really depends. I mean, I think the first thing that, once you set up those values and you understand that our remit was really like inspire, nothing inspires the people around you than doing great work and doing it where everybody can see it, And my goal was frankly to roll up my sleeves and do the work and set the bar for what I wanted the work to be. And then, people start talking, right? It's like, what's Danielle doing with the creative department? What's happening over there? That's really interesting. We want more of that. And, over time, we started to expand our sphere of influence, and more of the organization was asking for our help, not just creatively, but strategically. And the stories are a place of real authenticity. And one of the first things that I tried to establish with the team was that it wasn't just about what we make, it's about how we make it. And I have a dream that I haven't fully realized, but I've done it in different ways of creating an entire ad that's powered by earners, because the majority of our drivers and couriers are musicians or actors or directors or are aspiring something or other that you could literally use to make an ad about them. And I think
I love that idea.
Very Inception-like. But it's also incredibly true to our ethos, which is that, we support these drivers and these people with dreams. And there was a time when the prevailing opinion was that being an Uber driver was a last resort. And when you talk to these people, it is absolutely not that. They drive for us, they courier for us because it offers a flexibility and an empowerment that they can't get from the first way of working, which I think is a very outdated view of an occupation. So your friend Lacey, there are many stories like that. I mean, there's one about, the professional golfer right now who got injured and couldn't golf and ultimately drove for Uber to pay for his rental car. So sometimes these stories come to us, but really what we set out to do is we actually innovated a casting approach. So they're sort of like our Nike athletes. And we wanted to make sure that we had a pool of drivers and couriers across the entire globe who not only had interesting stories and not only were from diverse backgrounds or had, satisfied our casting goals, but also were people that could walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. And we could feel comfortable casting as an actor playing themselves in an ad, so that there were no actors playing Uber drivers anywhere around the globe in any of our communications.
Oh, I love it. I could see how, to your point, it's like supers are just like drummer, lead guitar,
Yep.
vocals, right? And the song that's playing under might even be the track that if they ever came together, they make. There's so much you could do with it. I can't turn that off, by the way, so I'm sorry. I can't not go with your idea.
No, it's
But
great.
it is Inception. All right, let's go back. Let's go to brand. So, well, your idea, someone else's idea, and if it's your idea, like obviously it's an education tool as much as anything else, right? It's who were you the one that said brand needs to be in my name and my title?
Well, we decided as a creative department with our brand team that since we had grown Uber Eats to what Uber Eats was, that we needed to take advantage of, the share of voice, that when you see Uber Eats, you should think Uber, and when you see Uber, you should think Uber Eats. And the design system for both of those things were so drastically different that we had to really think about how to create, brand guidelines that allowed us to be a little bit more fluid with these two very disparate parts of the business. So once we designed the new brand identity and the guidelines that were for U for B, Uber for business, delivery, mobility, earner, safety, all of the things that create, a very intricate and complex design system, I think it was a natural fit for us to start to take on brand strategy as well. And, back to our conversation about culture, great strategy is really about mining for amazing insights, marrying them with cultural forces or market forces to solve our biggest business problems. And when you hand all of that to creative people, what you get are creative solutions to growth. And I think those two missions, if you will, or capabilities coming together, it was recognized as something that could be very powerful.
Which comes first, culture or creative? Like if you get the creative part right, that's gonna like sort of inspire everyone on the inside, or do you have to get it right on the inside and then build it from the inside out?
For me, it was building my personal creative team with the culture in mind. So first it was that, and then it was empowering them, emboldening them to, we talk a lot about expand your sphere of influence, go and build relationships, go inspire people. And I think this is the biggest difference between agency creatives and brand side creatives that I've noticed is you need the kind of creative people who are relatively egoless, who have a lot of confidence in their ability, but are really egoless to understand that building relationships is 50% of it. And inspiring people to go along with you means they have to trust you. So, being patient enough to build that trust, to have the conversations, to put in the time means you're going to get better assignments, better work, and ultimately, more people giving you fuel. When you go and you inspire the data team about how amazing data can be for a playbook for creative people, all of a sudden they feel like they're hanging out with the kids who are doing something cool, and data people get inspired. And the next thing you know, you get better data, which gets the strategist more inspired. And then it's just this flywheel that starts with, frankly, just being fucking kind.
Yeah, totally. And there's energy, right? It's just like, and by the way, I think this is a conversation now about fear, right? Like, why don't we? What do we fear? What are we afraid of? We just have a speculation of what every little silo is all about and what their motives are, their agendas. But to your point, openness and kindness, and like making sure that they see, like, here's actually how you help us be better. Like you said, the word fuel.
Yeah.
Right. And then it doesn't take them. It's like, well, now that we've brought the horse to water, do they need to sort of see like, hey, by the way, that piece of creative came from you. Like without you and that data, this piece doesn't happen. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's the bane of my existence is, I think, to go back to your question about what are we so scared of, good ideas have many mothers. And as creative people whose currency is your portfolio and your ideas, I mean, I can't tell you how many interviews I've been on where people have been like, what part of this did you do? And you're like, really?
Mm-hmm.
But I get it. I get it. There was, there's probably been a lot of history where people have claimed ideas that they didn't have much to do with the making of. But inside the walls of Uber, we've established a culture and a team that does go back to that strategist or does go back to that data scientist and say, this started with you. Sports has gotten it right. It's like we credit assists and RBIs just as much as we credit the goals.
Totally.
And if we're really going to think about advertising marketing as a team sport, we got to start, giving the medals where they belong.
Is there, I mean, I feel like the Effies might be closest. Who's like the assist award show? Where's the dimes?
I don't know. Maybe we should start it. It's a good one.
All right, I like where your head's at on that.
Yeah.
No, I know you're spot on. It's so even when I started all of this for Courageous, I thought it was about courageous ideas. And I still believe, can line courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. But realized, wow, if we have a leader at the top who's not open to that courageous idea, they just understand the power of brand or what creativity could do for the business. And they're just shut off. They're a red light. Well, wait a minute. No, this is about courageous leadership. This is about opening up someone's mind and be like, see, this is what's possible when there's more creativity at the C-suite or on the business side. And the vessel is kindness or education wrapped in entertainment. And then suddenly they see what's possible and off you go. But that takes up a lot of energy for a lot of people. It can get exhausting, right? Do you feel like that is like your role? You've got your team and then like how you interact with many on the other side of the brain. Like, how do you go about doing that where you bring them along? And I'm not trying to like pander or belittle, right? Like finance guy wants to talk about numbers. How do you get that person to go, oh, wait, I see the power now of creativity?
It's difficult. And speaking those different languages and being able to walk into conference rooms and take on one hat and take off another hat and figure out what your role is in that meeting, I think is what separates really good creatives from really good creative leaders. And I'm not suggesting we don't need both. We do. But those creative leaders are the ones that make space for the people who are just like, I want to do ideas all day long. And I think that inspiring the finest guy might be a little hard, but
this is going to be the longest podcast ever. We're staying on here till we figure it out.
Well, I mean, certainly I've inspired CFOs about headcount and things like that. I mean, you've definitely got to, understand how to make space for your team or to talk about headcount as being an opportunity for growth, not just a backfill position. So I think that I'm more interested in inspiring the brand leader in India to think about how to use earners in their casting in the right way, or how to, ultimately effectively think about our suite of products in a new way. And again, when you bring more people to that table and you say, here's Corey with this amazing research that we've done about everyday use and who the people out there are actually going to use one or more modalities of Uber that were actually going to drive the growth, and this leading to that insight that let us create this thing, and unpacking that story for people can go a long way. It's just about having the patience to do it and speaking the right language. I mean, there's an ongoing conversation in this industry about whether we're making ads for each other or whether we're making ads for growth and ultimately business driving efforts. And, I'll take our work for Ukraine, for example. It was all those things. It was everything wrapped up in one. It was searching for the right earners who were not, giving rides. They were literally shuttling people to safety. And talk about a moment where a ride is no longer a ride. I mean, that's the opening line of the work that we did there. But it was also about how we made it. We wanted to give Banda, the Ukrainian agency, work. These Ukrainian people wanted to work, both the drivers that we, allowed to work on the platform and the agencies who were like, yes, we're at war, but we do not need your sympathy. We need your projects. Mm-hmm. And understanding that was the right way of going about telling the story. And knowing that telling that story, we couldn't tell that story if we weren't, underpinning it with the actions of our social impact team and making sure that we were telling the stories about, we gave the World Food Group our platform. We literally said, here's our tech stack. Go deliver whatever you need to deliver. We've moved monuments. We've used our high capacity vehicles to ultimately move the most valuable art out of Ukraine. I mean, we are doing the work on the ground, and that gave us the right to ultimately tell that story. And I can stand in conference rooms and talk to executives about we should really be telling driver stories, and this is going to be really good for our brand, and it's also going to drive the business, and hand waving, right? Versus showing up with the story and saying, see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is now about culture, right? This is such a bigger
That's right.
idea. And when you were talking about industry, for our industry, I was curious. I now know what you mean. You meant our industry, like agency people.
Yep.
But you're in the tech industry too, right? So that example was an example of showing them the result of that's the C. When you have so much access to data, which I'm sure you do, how do you make sure I keep coming back to a conversation I had it on the air somewhere else this week, this performance marketing conversation versus what I call preference marketing, and everyone's like, oh well, what do the numbers say, what do the numbers say? And I'm like, when was the last time you bought something from someone you never heard of before? If you don't trust it, and the last great currency as far as I'm concerned is trust, and trust is brand. So in your world, not a small company, tech industry, do they understand the differences between preference or performance, or they're like no, it's all performance all the time?
Absolutely understand it and desire both. There are no conversations to which I have to have with Dara that's about why trust and reputation is important. Absolutely, just like any other company, the investments will vary in terms of the support for which side of that equation you're discussing, depending on the business needs, depending on a gazillion things that go into the strategy of the year. I think the thing that I'm on a mission to do is to unite them more. And it becomes very difficult at a place like Uber because, you've got privacy settings, you've got, things in the way of really true attribution modeling. But at the same time, you have to know that there's a correlation between your brand lift studies and, your brand health trackers and ultimately how you're performing on the back end. And I come from a digital world where that customer experience and that end-to-end journey was everything. And if you understood it, you could create trust building work at any point of that moment of influence that you had along the journey. And sometimes it's a TV spot, and sometimes it's an activation, and sometimes it's an email. It doesn't really matter. And I think I've built the kind of creative team that understands that while we do amazing, beautiful, cinematic, movie trailers for Thanksgiving that has a beautiful underpin insight in the US about how everybody plans their Thanksgiving and nobody plans on how to get the hell out of there, is really great and beautiful for the Reserve product. But at the same time, when I get out of my Uber at LAX and it sends me a push on the app that says, we see you're at the airport, do you want to book your ride back to the airport for your return flight now? I know that piece of push notification is going to drive the business a hell of a lot more than the TV spot.
Mm-hmm.
And those connection points, I think, are interesting and frankly overlooked in this conversation about which is it. Come on, you guys, everybody knows it's both. The unlock is figuring out how to connect the journeys.
Well, I also wonder, the other one I've been battling with is this privacy conversation, because I think it's very easy and lazy to be like, privacy, protect your privacy, and fear, right? I don't want you to know all this stuff. But the flip side of that is, wait a minute, personalization, right? It's not about invading your arena. It's about trying to be a utility brand and give you precisely what you want in a personalized manner. But are people blocking that now, where you're like, I can't totally give you there's so much fear you're missing the personalization side of this thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's blessings and curses to all of it. And the privacy, conversation is a deep one. And I think Apple is definitely building their brand around their points of view on privacy, where I think we're building a brand more on the idea of reliability and really playing a role in your life. So, yes, it gets in the way, but I'm also, of the mind that those things are in place to also protect people. So again, back to do the right thing, period. We're always going to, as a business, tread lightly into that to make sure that we are being a service business and personalization is the end goal, and making sure that our data practices on the other end are in healthy order.
So for the listener, they can't help but notice a very put together, thoughtful person that I'm interviewing or conversing with today. But take us back to how you got here. Like, we talked a lot about mentorship, right? And
Yeah.
who saw something in you before you saw it, and how did that help kind of become a rocket ship for you?
I mean, so many people, right? So many people, back to my mom, who I can remember at such a young age, people being like, she's an old soul. And I can remember teachers telling my parents, like, there's never a time where Danielle's not telling stories. In so many ways, this line of work, it's not just what I do, it's who I am. And I had a lot of people who recognized that in me and encouraged it. They may not even been understanding what they were encouraging, but I think, in the early years, you can trace it all the way back and not be surprised at all how it manifested. I actually, my very first, relationship with a teacher, my choir teacher in the 6th grade is retiring after 43 years in the business. And she sent me this text and she was like, after all of these years, after all of these students, you are still the one that had the most profound impact on me. And I was thinking back to that moment of like, just how seen I felt by someone who took care of me and taught me things that could never have been taught in a curriculum or inside a classroom. Things like self-care, things like being an independent woman, things like having a voice, but knowing how to use it properly. All of these things, I think, added up to, the sort of additive effect of me being a storyteller and me having the confidence to understand how I wanted to navigate my life and my career that way. I got super lucky in college. Jim Horde was a creative director at DDB Dallas who happened to teach one of my advertising classes and was like, you get this. So as a freshman in college, I was exposed to the industry.
And I think in college, I think another thing we share in common is our love of soccer, right? And
Yeah.
so, in the spirit of even the work you're doing today, we're back to the power of team, right? And I do think the best teammates are prepared. Like, you're ready to do your part. You're ready to contribute. You want to be on the pitch. Our business, this whatever industry this is competitive. It is, right? And you want to. I always say it's like doing a crossword puzzle, except the
Yeah.
answers don't come out the next day, and you're kind of screwed if you don't figure it out.
Yep.
So you have these mentors who help you get you ready, but then you're also a team player. By the way, where'd you play? What position did you play, and where'd you play in college?
I was a midfielder and I played at Southern Methodist University in Dallas.
We're holding midfield, winger. What were you?
Outside left.
Oh, so you just what a surprise! You're just running all day,
Running all day.
and dimes. No wonder you want this assist award. You're just feeding in assists into the
That's
center
right.
of the box.
For all those crosses and corner kicks.
Okay, give me one. This isn't on the spot. Give me one lesson from soccer that you bring into your work.
Team is my love language, Ryan. And, in an industry that will take so much of you, will take everything if you aren't ready to say stop. I think the only way to do it, have fun, and be successful without killing yourself is relying on the people around you. And that's a team sport thing, right? On my worst day, I knew that I had somebody who had my back. On their worst day, I had theirs. And that's something that I mean, my teams are sick of hearing me say it, but there's no trophies for being a martyr. You burn out and you leave the industry and no one wants that. We need you. And the way that you do that is you hustle for each other and you show up when other people can't. And when you go on vacation, you someone's Instagram stories. Like, you got to support the on and off and the sprinting and the stopping that this business is, requires of you.
I also, and I'm going off my own experience, and this is not to say I had a shitty experience out of the gate, because I didn't. I was at a 700 person network out of the gate. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But for anyone who's listening, and I want you to also be thinking about that idea as we end our time together. Sometimes at first you don't get a say. You just have to get in. You have to just get in, and you don't get a say who you work for, and it can be cutthroat. And there's probably a reason you remember the best boss you ever had and the worst boss you ever had. That means you need experiences. But if you have confidence and faith in your work, you go start to build your network. Danielle, one of the things I'm most worried about of the last couple of years, this sort of transactional remote work, is those collisions are less and less. And I think this up and coming generation who's like, oh, I love my life. I'm so productive. I don't even have a commute. I'm like, yeah, but you're missing these collisions with people that you're like, oh my goodness, that person. I can't, like, tell me how you got there on that idea. And I want to work with that person. It might take a year. What is your advice for the listener on who's going on the journey, may or may not have had a good experience with creativity, may want to hang it up, may be frustrated they're not in the Premier League like you are right now? What's your take for them?
Finding your people in this business is everything, to your point. And you don't find them if you don't sort of go on the journey. And yeah, Zoom is great for a lot of things. And I appreciate the sort of hypercharged productivity it's given us in so many ways. And, not having to leave my family as much as I once did. I mean, I'm very grateful for those things. But I also look back on the last 20, 25 years in this industry and can name, just like you asked me before, who inspired you along the way, who took a bet on your potential, who saw something in you before you knew it. All of that luck strings itself together to manifest into where we are now. And so if you're close to those opportunities, or you're not open to the collisions as you're talking about, or being in the right place at the right time, you're going to miss out on that. So I think my encouragement is, recognize the opportunities and freaking floor it when they come. And not everything is an opportunity. And if you can hone in on that skill of like when to stay home and be on Zoom versus when to get on that plane or when to go in the office, to be in the position to feed off of other people and make connections, it has to be top of mind.
Danielle Hawley, I look forward to seeing what this looks like 3 years from now. I can't wait to see the spot. If you build it, they will come. Inception meets, Entrepreneurs meets spot.
We'll do it.
And thanks so much for giving us a little bit of your life today. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.